Good day and welcome to the Valley Regional Forum, where substantive issues are discussed that influence the San Fernando Valley. Today we'll be talking with Bobby Shriver, candidate for the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, District 3.
Bobby, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself very briefly, and then we'll get into the questions.
I served in Santa Monica in the City Council for 8 years, part of the time as mayor. Prior to that, I did some philanthropic work on AIDS in Africa and on debt relief in the United States, federal government, and internationally. Prior to that, I made a bunch of Christmas records here in Los Angeles with a team of friends for the Special Olympics. We recorded 9 records. They have a Keith Haring mother and child drawing on the cover of them. They've raised more than $100 million for Special Olympics programs, including programs here in Los Angeles and in the Valley over 10 years. Prior to that, I was an investment banker. I went to law school, and before that I was a newspaper reporter here at the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner.
Interesting.
Question number 1. The Board of Supervisors is the executive and legislative head of the most complex county government in the entire United States. That means complex budgets, successes and failures. On the negative side, the board, in concert with county sanitation districts, approved and constructed a $430 million railway system to haul garbage to a desert landfill. Now the board has determined that the railway system is too expensive to use. Instead, LA County will pay Orange County an additional $15 million a year to accept our trash into their landfills. $430 million plus additional costs. How could something like this happen, and how would you avoid fiascos like this if you were elected?
Well, I've had a lot, that's a good question. I've had a lot of experience with complex budgets and making them come in on time and on budget. In Santa Monica, we took all the trash in-house. The government does it all. There are no private haulers. There were a bunch of private haulers, and what we found was that the complexity, even in such a simple thing as the use of alleys. The city truck would be there and 3 private haulers would be there at the same time, gumming up the alley. Traffic couldn't get through. There was no coordination whatsoever. So we got rid of all that, and the city now does it itself. So there's one person who's responsible, the city, and they have natural gas vehicles, so pollution is down and traffic is down because there's one group of trash trucks running around town. I'm for accountability and transparency. This goes not only with regard to the transportation systems of the county, but the child care, the justice system. There's a lot of diffused responsibility in the county where no one is quite sure who's in charge, and therefore when things don't go well, no one knows who to blame. One of my most important objectives will be to stop that. I like being accountable in Santa Monica, and in my private sector philanthropic work, I love being accountable because I like to outperform expectations of people. If no one knows who's in charge, it's a terrible system, it frustrates people, and it's got to stop. So that's what I'm going to do.
Recently, there were a couple of longtime Los Angeles companies that decided to leave. They're moving to Texas. Those 2 companies are Occidental Petroleum and Toyota Motors. Both of these companies had decided to leave the city of Los Angeles for a variety of reasons. Some say it's because of incentives that Texas has offered them. Others say that California taxes and regulations have driven them out of the state. What are your feelings on this? What more can the county and the city and the state do in order to preserve these longtime businesses?
Sure, well, I think the #1 thing is we have to really examine the overregulation of certain companies. Not to be trite about it, but Baywatch moved to Florida, a television show. It's 100 jobs. These are much bigger employers, but just to give them as an example, they found they couldn't continue to make that television show here because of the county's regulation of their use of the beaches and the cost of using the beaches. So to me, the idea that that show, as silly as some people may think it is, moved to Florida and took those 100 jobs to Florida is ridiculous. We should not allow that, nor should we allow these other large companies to be moving out of town. Their press releases always say they go for consolidation, but their press releases are political documents, obviously. What they really go for is easier business conditions, less taxation, better housing for their employees. I know when I talk to business leaders, one of the biggest criticisms they have of LA is the cost of housing, particularly of affordable housing for mid-level employees. There's nowhere that people can live. We have a rents crisis in LA. We need to build a lot of housing. The county can be active there. They have the boomerang money from their redevelopment dissolution that can be brought into play. There are 88 different cities who each have some boomerang money. That needs to be consolidated and put into an affordable housing fund where they can produce equity for the developers so that these units can be built. People can live here. Look, people want to live here. and they can work in these big companies. But if we don't have well-trained people who are trained for the jobs that are out there by our job training programs, who can house themselves here at reasonable rents, companies are going to leave. One of the biggest attractions to Texas is not so much its low tax environment, but its low cost of living. This is the thing that people don't remember. So we got to get really very active on that, and I would say particularly in the film and television sort of creative industries. That's a real line in the sand area for me. Just to give you an example, New York State primarily, New York City has a $435 million budget for tax credits for films and television. We have 100. So, and Louisiana has 267. My opponent said in a debate the other night, she said, well, you know, Bobby, it's hard for us to compete with these other states. And I thought, it's hard for California to compete with Louisiana? No. It's not hard for California to compete with Louisiana or New York. And we ought to dedicate ourselves to the idea that we're competitors. We're going to hold on to these jobs. And we're going to know about them before they think about leaving. We're going to be in touch with these business leaders and trying to find out, what do I need to do to keep you competitive? How's your business? Are you competing well? We're the most competitive economy in the history of the world. Your kids and my kids are competing against people in India, China, Europe, and people are aggressive now in competition. So we need to really be on top of these things, and the governments, both the city of Los Angeles and the county and all the 88 cities who are our partners in this activity. Just think about Long Beach. It's not in the 3rd district. At that close of that Boeing plant in Long Beach, how many great middle class with benefits and healthcare jobs went away? That's a regional concern of a very high order. The ports, it's crazy. We got to get on it.
The city of Los Angeles has voted in favor of a hydraulic fracking moratorium. Opponents of the moratorium say that fracking is a fine way to produce new jobs, and that there are currently about 30,000 jobs tied to the fracking industry. Additionally, the oil reserves under California, if extracted, they say, would eventually drive down prices at the pump and foster energy independence. Supporters of the moratorium say that fracking is environmentally dangerous, and that a larger investment in renewable energy technologies would be a better way to go. Where do you stand on the fracking issue?
I stand with the water. Fracking, as I'm sure you know, but maybe not everybody knows, they drill the pipe, it goes through the aquifer to the oil, which is underneath the water table. You can't do that in LA. You can't do it because the risk to our water supply is too great. We have too little water here, and it's too great a risk. Until someone can prove to me, and I hope to the community, that that pipe that goes through the aquifer is completely secure, I'm against it. I'm for development of, by the way, of the valley's water resources. There's a lot of water underground here that could be reused and redeveloped. In Santa Monica, we serve 70% of the drinking water is from a well in San Vicente. We sued the oil companies, we built a water treatment plant, we clean the water, we serve it. That's the future for the valley also. But there needs to be a plan to do that. There needs to be a coordination to do that among many entities. That has not been done. That's why the drought, as terrible as it is somewhat of a blessing, because again, for my children and your children, the idea that in 20 years they're going to keep pumping water from the Colorado River or from the Sacramento Delta is crazy. 25% of all the electricity generated in the entire state of California goes to run that pumping system. It's not sustainable, it's terrible for climate change, and we have to come up with more innovative ways of doing it. If someone can prove that those pipes won't leak, you know, I'm for economic development, and God knows I'm for energy independence, but the risk to California's water, I think, is too great.
How about renewable energy, subsidizing renewable energy? How do you feel about that?
I think all of those technologies need to be developed to the point where the private market can take over. I'm not for subsidizing things that the private market can buy, but as we try to reduce the cost, the problem with carbon is it's cheap. So if a 1 kilowatt costs you 4 cents from coal and $45 from solar, no one's going to build solar. So those are not real numbers, but just to the extent you could move the solar number closer to the coal number, if it's taken up, I think that's an effective thing. But again, in terms of regulation, I think it's also very important. For example, in the city of Los Angeles, it takes 80 to 100 days to put a solar array on a single-family house. San Diego takes 7 days. Why? San Diego is an online system, doesn't need all the crazy inspections and so forth that LA does. So people are less likely to put the solar systems on their homes. That's crazy. We should have a 6-day system in LA. We should be the leader in solar technology, and we should be the leader in water technology. The leader in water technology in the world right now is in Israel, because the Israelis use 1/3 of the water, have 1/3 of the water that we have per person per year, so they've developed leak detection and various other tremendous technologies that make water use much more efficient. We should have those here in LA, and we should be developing them. was up at CSUN the other day talking to the president about whether their water engineering department should be developed there, perhaps in consultation with some Israeli interests, so that that technology can be deployed in the valley. It's essential that that happen.
Measure R is a countywide sales tax of 1/2 cent that already exists, that people are paying today. There's a measure that's going to be before the voters before too long to ask them to extend that beyond 2029, which is where the tax would stop today, to 2069. Competing with this tax is a proposal to raise 1/2 cent in the city of Los Angeles to repair LA city streets and sidewalks. So we'll either be paying 9 cents, which is what we pay today, or we'll be paying 9.5 cents for at least 16 years, and with the 1/2 cent sales tax in the county to 2069. How can we reconcile these two?
Well, that's a polling question, and I don't know the answer, whether they can both survive. The political tea leaf readers will tell us that. I'm for the Measure R extension very dramatically. I think particularly in the valley where the north-south routes need to be connected, you guys need to have a subway that goes to the airport. Imagine how different the valley would be if you could take a subway from Sherman Oaks to LAX. Crazy. So we got to think, it'll take years to do that, but if we don't have the Measure R money, it won't get done. The north-south connectors won't get done. So people do need to vote, ladies and gentlemen, for the Measure R extension, because that enables these kinds of projects to be done, and the valley needs to get its fair share of those projects. As to the LA street repair measure, I honestly haven't studied it. It's a city of Los Angeles matter. It's not a county matter. Obviously, you prefer just theoretically to have one such measure at a time, but I think all your viewers should think about whether the transit for the whole area of Santa Clarita Valley, Long Beach, whether that system should be built right away, because that's what the Measure R extension is about. And I know for a lot of us, the guys with a little gray hair who were in LA 25 years ago, we thought no one would ever ride the subway, there would never be light rail or anything. We were wrong. I speak for myself, I was wrong. The ridership on these lines, the orange line here, is at capacity. So young people in particular want to live near transit. They want to take transit every day when they go to work, which is very exciting. You know, it's a very hopeful prospect for all of us. And we need, as the leaders and as the older guys who were wrong, we need to smack ourselves around a little bit and get down and get that stuff built right away.
One follow-up to that, if Measure R was to pass, if the extension of Measure R was to pass, how do you feel about putting in new roadways, not existing roadways or repairing existing ones, but new roadways to get people from the San Fernando Valley to Santa Monica, from Sherman Oaks to Hollywood?
I don't think you want new roadways, unless I'm misunderstanding your question. Anybody who says therefore further work on the 405 will get exactly one vote, which will be their own. No one else will vote for you. I think people want transit. They want, as I said, look at the orange line. The thing is packed. There's standing room only on the orange line. People want that. They don't want new roadways. They want new parking. You want to be able to get to the transit stop and park there. So, or to have a shuttle system that takes you in some easy way to the transit stop that you get on the transit. I mean, I know people in Santa Monica who drive to Culver City now, park, and go downtown. You know, so when that light rail comes into Santa Monica, everybody's going to ride that thing. So I think people want that kind of transit, whether it's light rail, special bus lanes like the Orange Line, or the subway. That's what people want. And that, we got to give them that.
The most solemn responsibility of the Board of Supervisors is to protect the most vulnerable citizens, children. A recent report deeply criticizes the Department of Children and Family Services, attributing many deaths of children to a stifling bureaucracy and inept workforce. Just prior to this report, a new director, Philip Browning, was brought into the department. Is Mr. Browning on the right track to repair this tragic situation? Do we need to do more?
I hate it when people personally blame the bureaucracy or blame staff. I always try to blame myself. You know, what did I do wrong? And in this case, I think the buck stops with the supervisors. They've been running the system, there are 5 of them. It's their fault. I don't like to blame, you know, inept workforces. I think people, generally speaking, want to do a good job. They want to work hard, they want to be successful, they want to have prestige in the work they do. They don't want to be tongue-lashed by their bosses or tongue-lashed by the LA Times or the Daily News. So I think it's really important as new people are elected to the board, the term limits coming into play, that the new people coming with a totally different head. I think that's one of the reasons people should vote for me, because I'm a bit of an outsider. I'm a problem solver. I'm a progressive problem solver, I would say. But I don't come from the same Sacramento-based, let me tell you what to do attitude that one of my opponents comes from. I just think a total reimagining of the way that system works is in order. And the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendation to put all the departments under one, the newspapers call it a czar, you can call it whatever you want, but that there's one person who's responsible, so everybody knows that person there, if there's a problem, we call on them. That's what I was saying to you earlier about transparency and accountability. You have to know who the boss is. And the supervisor's job is not to be the boss themselves, it's to hire that boss and let that person do their job. I don't know Mr. Browning, I haven't had a chance to meet him, I'm looking forward to doing so when I'm elected, but if he's the right person, he needs to be left alone to do it, and he needs all the elements of the county bureaucracy that deal with children to report to him. It's wrong to make these children and their parents run around from this division to that division to this division, fill out new forms, go to new locations. It's just not right. It's got to be fixed. And it's the supervisor's issue, not the staff's.
The West San Fernando Valley has a number of medical marijuana shops. They're clustered in the West San Fernando Valley because the County of Los Angeles has been very diligent in restricting the operation of medical marijuana facilities in the County of Los Angeles. As a result of this, we have people coming into the West Valley, into Woodland Hills in particular, to purchase marijuana at shops up and down Ventura Boulevard. We are a victim of, I guess you could say, our own success. The county will not allow these facilities in the county. The city has allowed them in the city of Los Angeles, and now local business owners, local residents are dealing with the fallout from this. How do you see the county's part in this? How do you see the county helping the city of Los Angeles to deal with this problem in particular in the West San Fernando Valley?
Well, one of the biggest responsibilities of the supervisor is to work with the cities in your district, and for that matter, the cities in the whole county. There are 88 cities. And as a person who came out of city government, I feel I know how to work with cities. Having worked with Zev Yaroslavsky, the supervisor, myself on homelessness issues in Santa Monica, I know how a city works with a supervisor, and I know how important that relationship is. And again, my opponent, who comes from Sacramento, is always talking about how her experience in Sacramento and studying these systems qualifies her, as opposed to me and the two other local government people who are running. I think it's the exact reverse. I think if you've had a local government experience, you're more qualified to work with local cities who have to implement policies than you were if you were in Sacramento. Turning to the marijuana issue, you know, to the extent, I feel I have a very good relationship with Mayor Garcetti and many members of the City Council, including many members of the City Council who represent these areas. And I think getting everybody into a room and in a respectful way and saying, look, what are we going to do about this? This is an issue. So people come up with answers. You can't go in there and beat them over the head. You have to solicit their input, let them think about it, let them go to their constituents and ask them what they think needs to be done. And some consensus will arise, I'm sure of that.
In 2012, the Board of Supervisors created a Citizens Commission to investigate reports of jail violence and other abuses by the Sheriff's Department. The Commission determined that these abuses were widespread in the department. But since that time, there have been additional indictments against former deputies for corruption and civil rights violations and other crimes. Recently, Sheriff Lee Baca resigned. Many of these issues have been attributed directly to Sheriff Baca. Was it mostly his fault? Or is there a deep structural problem with the Sheriff's Department that needs to be addressed?
I have to say, once again, as I said a moment ago, I hold the top guy responsible always. So yes, I would hold him responsible for it. And I would hold, honestly, the supervisors responsible, since although they're not elected to run the department, they are elected to run the department's budget. So here's another difference. My opponent who sometimes says, well, you know, this is an independently elected person, we can't tell them really what to do. My view is, if I make your budget, I can't tell you what to do, but I have a lot of influence over you. And you have to execute the things that I say, because if you don't, particularly in the second year of your budget, you're going to have a problem with me. So, look, 19 people have been indicted by the feds who are police officers. This is a disaster. Nothing is worse in law and order world than to have a police officer charged with a crime by the federal government. Whether there'll be more indictments, we certainly know that damages will have to be paid, certain convictions may be overturned based on this kind of behavior, and it's just unacceptable. So not only Sheriff Baca, but all his senior deputies have to take some part of that responsibility. I just don't believe in saying, oh no, it was that guy's fault. I don't believe in that. I believe, like, I'm there, I'm responsible. So I honestly wish that various people would do that and say, look, I made a mistake. We didn't act quickly enough on this. And I promise anybody who looks for me that if I make a mistake, I'm going to say right into that camera, hi, I made a mistake. Here's how I messed up. Here's how I'm going to fix it. If you don't like it, vote me out of office. No problem. But I don't hide, and I'm not going to hide in this job.
The County of Los Angeles recently announced plans to potentially restrict development in the Santa Monica Mountains, in particular in the mountains behind Malibu. There are property owners that are now concerned that existing permits will not be honored. They're concerned that they're not going to be able to develop their property. What can you say to these homeowners, these property owners, and how do you see this issue working out within the County of Los Angeles to the benefit of everyone?
Well, I think you slightly overstated it maybe for a fact that there's chaos out there. I don't think there's chaos, and I think as to the grandfathering of people who are already going through the Coastal Commission county process, depending on where they were in that process, they're going to be allowed to proceed, as I understand it. Certain people who are just at the beginning of the process are going to have to go through the new process. But that specific issue came up at the hearing and has been decided, as I understand it, in a way that people are comfortable, or at least the lawyers who were present in the meetings I was in felt comfortable about that process. The great question there, and I think Zev and his staff have done an amazing job, Ben Saltzman has done an amazing job in harmonizing the interests of many of the people in those mountains, the horse people, the agricultural people, the wine people. You know, it's a pretty amazing political accomplishment, if you ask me, that all those people were gotten together by Ben and Zev over many years, and now you're going to have a one-stop shop. Before you had to go to coastal, then you had to go to county, then you had to go from county back to coastal. Property owners didn't like that. Now, very clear standards, very clear stuff. You go to one place, you get your permit, you're done. I think it's going to be cheaper and faster for property owners than it was in the past. I mean, if it isn't, I hope to hear from people. So if I'm sitting in my office a year from now, 16 people call me up and go, this is crazy, look what happened, I'm going to find out about that and make sure that it isn't crazy. And I did that in Santa Monica. I hate it when people are subjected to crazy bureaucracy. That's why I got into government in Santa Monica. I got in a fight with the city of Santa Monica. That's why I got into the government, because they were behaving badly towards the residents. I had no particular ambition to run for office. I was doing my philanthropic work. I was, you know, doing the family work, social justice, those who much is given, much is expected. And all of a sudden I found myself with my neighbors in a fight with the city, and I had to run to square that away. And I'm running here to square away stuff like that. So if I find out crazy stuff is happening in the Santa Monica Mountains, I'm going to try to make it right. And I'm certainly going to listen to people. You know, I'm going to go up there, whether it's Topanga or the other mountain communities, and say, you know, okay, you got a problem. What is it? Tell it to me. Let me hear it. And I'll try to do the right thing.
We've gotten through the 8 questions that we had for you.
Oh, good.
And we want to thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience at home or those watching?
Only that I'm a fighter. I'm not the normal kind of person who's been at this their whole life and started when they were 21 and ran to these offices. I did a whole other thing. I had private sector interest, private sector experience. I got into this because I saw the suffering of many of the clients of the county. You called it a solemn responsibility. I agree with you there. And I just felt at my age and with the ability I have to give back in my education and training that I could help in the shaking up of things. There's a big transition going on. There's 4 new people coming into office in the next 2 years. That has never happened before because there never were term limits before. That's a real opportunity to start things off in a new way and to bring this region into the competitive 21st century on water, on transit, on mental health care. The homeless vets thing, which I've worked hard on, is a huge issue. We have the biggest homeless vet population in America in LA. And we have the biggest VA facility in America, and they have not built any new beds. I have to get into a lawsuit with them to compel them to do that. I'm persistent. Someone called me this morning, she said, someone puts an email, I like about you, I said, no, what, she goes, you're very dogged. I said, dogged? She goes, yeah, you're dogged. I said, okay, I'm dogged. So I would say to your viewers, I'm dogged, I'm determined, and I'll really work hard for them if they vote for me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me out here.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you very much.
All right.